My name is Nellie Thompson, and I'm a 52-year-old woman who's seen more than her fair share of ups and downs. But let me start at the beginning. I married my college sweetheart, David, right after graduation. We were young, ambitious, and madly in love. I pursued a career as a financial consultant, specializing in the securities market. David, ever the entrepreneur, started his own cookie factory. Our professional lives were thriving, but there was a void in our personal life that we couldn't seem to fill. We wanted children, desperately. Month after month, we'd hope, only to be disappointed. We tried everything: fertility treatments, special diets, even old wives' tales. Nothing worked. After years of failed attempts and 3 rounds of unsuccessful IVF, David suggested surrogacy. I was hesitant at first. I don't know, David. What if I can't bond with the baby? I voiced my fears one evening. Nellie, look at me, David said, his eyes serious. That baby will be ours. Your eggs, my sperm. The surrogate is just a temporary home. I mulled it over for weeks. We attended counseling sessions, spoke to other couples who had gone through surrogacy, and finally, I agreed. The process was long and nerve-wracking, but 9 months later, our daughter Emma was born. The moment I held her in my arms, all my fears melted away. She was perfect, with David's nose and my eyes. Life seemed complete. I juggled my career and motherhood, while David's cookie factory flourished. We were living the dream: successful careers, a beautiful home, and a daughter we adored. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Emma had just turned 5 when David started complaining of persistent back pain. It's nothing, he'd say, probably just pulled a muscle at the gym. But it wasn't nothing. After weeks of pestering, I finally convinced him to see a doctor. The diagnosis hit us like a freight train: advanced pancreatic cancer. 4 months after the diagnosis, I found myself standing by his hospital bed, holding his hand as he took his last breath. Emma was asleep in the waiting room, blissfully unaware that her world was about to change forever. The road to recovery was long and arduous. I sought therapy, joined support groups for widows, and slowly, ever so slowly, I started to heal. That's when I made a decision that would change the course of our lives once again. I decided to take over David's cookie factory. I threw myself into the business, learning everything I could about cookie production, supply chains, and food regulations. It was exhausting, but it gave me a sense of purpose I'd been lacking since David's death. Miss Thompson, the new chocolate chip supplier, is online too, my assistant, Jake, called out one afternoon. I sighed, glancing at the clock. It was already past 6, and I hadn't seen Emma all day. Tell them I'll call back tomorrow, I replied, gathering my things. As I drove home, guilt gnawed at me. I was working longer hours than ever before, and Emma was spending more and more time with her babysitter, Maria. When I walked through the door, Emma ran to me, her face lighting up. Mommy, you're home early. I drew a picture of us at the park. My heart sank. If 7 p.m. was early, I was doing something wrong. I followed her to the kitchen table, where her artwork was spread out. The drawing showed 2 stick figures, one big, one small, surrounded by trees and a sun with a smiley face. It's beautiful, Emma, I said, studying the picture. But why are we alone? Where are your friends? Emma shrugged. I don't know. I don't play with them much. Can we go to the park for real someday? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd been so focused on running the business, I'd neglected the most important part of my life, my daughter. The next few months were a balancing act. I tried to delegate more at work, to leave the office at a reasonable hour. But it was hard. The business was growing rapidly, and there was always one more meeting, one more decision to make. Emma's 7th birthday came around, and I promised her a big party. I spent weeks planning it, determined to make up for lost time. The day of the party arrived, and everything was perfect. We had a magician, a bounce house, and a cake in the shape of a unicorn. Emma was over the moon. But even as I basked in the moment, a part of me was distracted. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket, emails about a potential new contract, questions about next week's production schedule. I excused myself for a moment, stepping into the house to check my messages. When I came back out, the magician was packing up, and Emma was saying goodbye to her friends. "Did you see my card trick, Mommy?" Emma asked, running up to me. I felt a pang of guilt. I'd missed it. "I'm sorry, sweetie. I had to take a call. But I'm sure it was amazing." Emma's face fell for a moment before she plastered on a smile. "It's okay. Maybe next time." That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat on the edge of my bed, head in my hands. I was failing. Failing David's memory, failing our daughter, failing myself. Something had to change. I couldn't keep living like this, constantly torn between work and family. But what could I do? The business was thriving, providing the financial security I'd promised David I'd maintain for Emma. That's when it hit me. I didn't need to choose between the business and Emma. I needed to find a way to have both. A way to honor David's legacy while still being present for our daughter. The solution came to me during a late-night brainstorming session. I needed to hire a CEO. Someone who could run the day-to-day operations of the company while I maintained overall control as the owner. It wasn't an easy decision, but I knew it was necessary for both the business and my family. After an exhaustive search and countless interviews, I found the perfect candidate. Michael Stevens had years of experience in the food industry and shared my vision for the company's future. With Michael at the helm, I could finally step back and focus on what truly mattered, Emma. The following weeks were a period of adjustment for both of us. Emma was initially skeptical of my sudden availability, but gradually she began to open up. We started small, having breakfast together every morning, helping with homework in the evenings. Soon, we were planning weekend outings and movie nights. Slowly but surely, I was rediscovering the joy of motherhood. One evening, as we were baking cookies together, a nod to David's legacy, Emma turned to me with flour on her nose. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Anything." She hesitated for a moment before blurting out, "Why don't you have a photos of you pregnant with me?" The question caught me off guard. I'd always known this day would come, but I hadn't expected it so soon. Taking a deep breath, I decided honesty was the best policy. "Emma, sweetie, let's sit down for a moment," I said, guiding her to the kitchen table. "You were born in a special way. Dad and I wanted you so much, but I couldn't carry you in my tummy. So, a very kind woman helped us. She carried you for 9 months, but you're still our daughter. You have my eyes and your dad's smile." I waited anxiously for her reaction, ready for tears or anger. But Emma simply nodded, processing the information. "So, I have 2 moms?" she asked after a moment. "In a way, yes. But I'm your mom in all the ways that matter. I love you more than anything in this world." Emma thought for a moment, then shrugged. "Okay, can we finish the cookies now?" I laughed, relieved at her easy acceptance. "Of course, sweetheart." As we returned to our baking, I marveled at my daughter's resilience. She had been through so much, losing her father, dealing with an absent mother, and now learning about her origins. Yet here she was, smiling and covered in flour, taking it all in stride. As the years passed, Emma and I settled into a comfortable rhythm. Our bond grew stronger with each passing day, and I found myself rediscovering the joys of motherhood I had nearly forgotten. Emma blossomed into a vibrant, curious teenager, reminding me more and more of David with each passing day. One afternoon, as we were having our weekly mother-daughter chat over hot chocolate, Emma dropped a bombshell. "Mom, I've been thinking about my future," she said, stirring her drink pensively. I nodded encouragingly. "That's great, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" "Well," she hesitated. "I've been researching careers, and I think I want to be an SMM manager." I blinked, surprised. "Social media marketing? That's different from what I expected." Emma's eyes lit up. It's amazing, Mom. The way you can connect with people, build brands, create content. It's like art and business combined. I listened as she enthusiastically explained her plans, feeling a mix of pride and uncertainty. Part of me had always assumed she'd follow in my footsteps, maybe even take over the family business one day. But here she was, charting her own course. That sounds wonderful, Emma, I said, pushing aside my reservations. If that's what you're passionate about, I'll support you all the way. As Emma chattered on about her plans, my mind wandered to the company. Our cookie empire had grown beyond my wildest dreams under Michael's leadership. But I couldn't help wondering about its future. Who would take over when I was gone? Weeks turned into months, and Emma threw herself into learning everything she could about social media marketing. She took online courses, attended workshops, and even started managing social media accounts for some local businesses. Meanwhile, I found myself spending more time at the company again. Not because I didn't trust Michael, he was doing an excellent job, but because I felt a need to secure Emma's future, even if she didn't want to be directly involved in the business. One evening, as I was working late at the office, Emma called. "Mom, guess what?" she practically squealed through the phone. "I got an internship at top social agency." I felt a pang of disappointment, quickly followed by guilt for feeling that way. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." After we hung up, I sat back in my chair, conflicted. I was thrilled for Emma, of course. She was following her dreams, just as David and I had always wanted. But a small, selfish part of me couldn't help feeling like I was losing her to a world I didn't understand. The next morning, I called Emma to congratulate her again on her internship. Then, I took a deep breath and made my pitch. "Emma, I have a proposition for you," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "How would you feel about doing some social media work for our company? Just as a side project, of course. Your internship comes first." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Really?" Emma finally said, her voice a mix of surprise and excitement. "You'd trust me with that?" "Of course I would," I replied, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "You're talented, and you know our brand better than anyone. Plus, it would be a great addition to your portfolio." Emma agreed enthusiastically, and we spent the next hour brainstorming ideas. As we talked, I felt a sense of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of a new chapter for us, one where we could blend our passions and work together, even if it wasn't in the way I had originally envisioned. Time flew by, and before I knew it, Emma was graduating college. I couldn't have been prouder of her achievements, but I found myself facing a familiar dilemma. Emma was eager to spread her wings and work for a cutting-edge marketing firm, while I hoped she'd consider joining our family business. "Mom, I appreciate the offer, but I want to make my own way," Emma said over dinner one evening. "I don't want to be seen as the boss's daughter." I nodded, understanding her perspective. Then, an idea struck me. "What if no one knew you were my daughter?" I suggested. "You could apply like any other candidate, keep your connection a secret, and prove yourself on your own merits." And so, Emma joined our company under my mother's last name, quickly proving her worth in the marketing department. Months passed, and Emma seemed to be thriving. Then, one day, I received an unexpected call. "Mom," Emma's voice was filled with excitement. "I've met someone. He works here at the company, he's the deputy director at head office. I really like him." My heart swelled with joy. After everything we'd been through, Emma deserved happiness. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I can't wait to meet him." However, life had other plans. My mother suddenly fell ill. I found myself shuttling between the office and her house on the outskirts of town, trying to balance work and family once again. Despite the stress, Emma was eager for me to meet her new boyfriend. "Why don't you both come to Grandma's house?" I suggested. "We can have dinner together." The day arrived, and I welcomed Emma and her boyfriend, James, into my mother's modest home. James was indeed handsome and well-mannered, greeting me with a firm handshake and a charming smile. As we sat down to dinner, I poured wine for everyone, hoping to create a relaxed atmosphere. James took a few sips and began to open up. "Nellie," he said, his eyes surveying the room, "I must say, you've done a remarkable job raising Emma, especially as a single mother." I smiled politely, noticing the hint of condescension in his tone. "Emma is quite the catch," James went on, his voice taking on a patronizing tone. "She's really won the lottery with me, if I do say so myself. I can provide her with opportunities she's never dreamed of." I glanced at Emma, seeing discomfort flicker across her face. But she remained silent, and I decided to play along, not revealing that this was my mother's home, not mine. After James and Emma left, I sat Emma down for a serious conversation. "Honey," I began gently, I couldn't help but notice James's behavior tonight. "Don't you think he came across as a bit arrogant?" Emma sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I know, Mom. He can be a little full of himself sometimes. But he's really sweet when we're alone. Can't you give him another chance?" I looked into my daughter's pleading eyes, remembering my own youth and the mistakes I'd made. "All right," I conceded. "Everyone deserves a second chance. But please, be careful with your heart." 6 months flew by in a whirlwind of emotions and events. I had hoped that James would prove me wrong, that he'd show himself to be worthy of Emma's love. But life, as I've learned, rarely goes according to plan. One evening, Emma called me, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Mom, I have big news. James proposed, and I said yes. We're getting married." My heart sank, but I forced enthusiasm into my voice. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Congratulations." "There's more," Emma continued, oblivious to my hesitation. "We're having dinner with James's parents this weekend. They want to meet you." I knew I couldn't refuse. Of course, I'd love to meet them. As I pulled up to James's family home that Saturday, I felt a sense of foreboding. The house was a mansion, ostentatious in its luxury. Every detail screamed of wealth, from the manicured lawns to the gleaming sports cars in the driveway. James's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Worthington, greeted me at the door. Their smiles were wide but didn't reach their eyes. "Welcome, Nellie," Mrs. Worthington said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We're so pleased to finally meet you." Throughout the evening, their condescension was palpable. They spoke of Emma's future as if they were fairy godparents, bestowing unimaginable riches upon a poor, deserving girl. "We're not prejudiced people," Mr. Worthington declared over dinner. "We're happy to welcome Emma into our family, despite certain circumstances." I raised an eyebrow. "Circumstances?" Mrs. Worthington leaned forward, her voice lowered as if sharing a secret. "We know about Emma's origins. The surrogacy, your single motherhood, your financial situation." She glanced around, as if the modest furnishings of my mother's home had somehow followed me here. "We want you to understand," she continued, "that while we're generous people, we won't be extending financial help to you. This is about Emma's future, not yours." As the evening wore on, I decided to play along, curious to see how far they'd go. I nodded meekly, playing the part of the grateful, poor relative. James, emboldened by wine and his parents' approval, began to boast about his work at our company. "The boss is such a fool," he laughed. "So trusting. If I were in charge, I could siphon off millions without anyone noticing." My blood ran cold, but I kept my face neutral. "That's my boy," Mr. Worthington chuckled. "I've been doing the same at my company for years. While the owners are off on their yachts, I'm lining my pockets." He gestured around the opulent room. "You think you get all this by playing by the rules? Impossible." I sat there, nodding and smiling, my stomach churning with disgust. These were the people my daughter wanted to marry into? This was the man she thought she loved? As the evening wore on, I decided to probe a little further. Turning to Mr. Worthington, I asked innocently, "Where exactly do you work, sir? Your job sounds fascinating." Mr. Worthington puffed up with pride. I'm the Senior Vice President of Operations at Global Tech Industries, he boasted, naming a company I knew all too well. I smiled to myself, a plan forming in my mind. How interesting. Would anyone like some tea? I asked, my voice sweet. Mrs. Worthington nodded, rising from her seat. Of course, allow me. She returned moments later with an ornate tea set, pouring steaming, fragrant tea into delicate china cups for her family and Emma. Then, she turned to me with a smirk, placing a plastic cup and a cheap tea bag before me. I assume this is more familiar to you, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Best not to get ideas above your station. As the others sipped their tea and nibbled on exquisite pastries, Mrs. Worthington pointedly avoided offering me any dessert. I'm sure you understand, she simpered. Beggars can't be choosers, after all. I saw Emma's face contort with anger and hurt. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Mom, I think we should leave. I won't sit here and watch you be disrespected like this. I nodded, rising to my feet. You're right, dear. But before we go, there's something I need to do. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number, putting it on speaker. Hello, Richard? It's Nellie Thompson. Nellie, what a pleasant surprise. How can I help you? A jovial voice answered. I'm sitting here with a Mr. Worthington who claims to be your Senior VP of Operations. Could you confirm that for me? Of course, Nellie. Thomas Worthington, been with us for 15 years. Is everything all right? I took a deep breath. Not exactly, Richard. I'm afraid I've just overheard Mr. Worthington bragging about embezzling funds from your company. The room fell silent. Mr. Worthington's face drained of color. Richard's voice turned cold. Is that so? Well, Thomas, consider yourself fired. Expect a full investigation and legal action to follow. As I ended the call, I turned to James. As for you, James, you're also terminated from your position at Thompson Cookies, effective immediately. Thank you for highlighting the need for stricter background checks and oversight in our hiring process. The Worthingtons stared at me, slack-jawed. Mrs. Worthington found her voice first. What is the meaning of this? Who are you? I stood tall, my voice firm. I am Nellie Thompson, CEO and owner of Thompson Cookies, the company your son works for, or rather, used to work for. I took over after my late husband's death and grew it into the success it is today. I stepped back to focus on raising my daughter, but I never stopped being involved. The change in their demeanor was instant and nauseating. Mr. Worthington and James fell to their knees, pleading for forgiveness, their earlier arrogance replaced by pathetic groveling. Emma and I exchanged a look of disgust. Without another word, we turned and walked out of the house, leaving behind the sounds of desperate apologies and recriminations. The weeks following that fateful dinner were a whirlwind of activity. I ordered a comprehensive audit of all our financial records, focusing particularly on James's department. As I suspected, the results were damning. James had been siphoning off funds for months, cleverly disguising his theft as legitimate business expenses. I wasted no time in filing lawsuits against James for embezzlement and fraud. The legal battle was intense, but with the evidence stacked against him, we emerged victorious. The judge's verdict was music to my ears. The defendant is ordered to repay all stolen funds, with interest, and pay punitive damages to Thompson Cookies. Furthermore, he is barred from holding any senior management positions in the future. As we left the courthouse, Emma let out a long breath. It's over. It's really over. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Yes, it is. And now, we rebuild. Over the next few months, Emma and I threw ourselves into revitalizing the company. I officially retook my position as CEO, and Emma joined me as the head of our newly expanded marketing department. Within a year, we had doubled our revenue and market share. The Thompson Cookies brand was stronger than ever. One evening, as we were wrapping up a particularly successful day, Emma's phone buzzed. A smile spread across her face as she read the message. Everything okay? I asked, recognizing that particular smile. Emma nodded, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. It's Alex. He's asking if I want to grab dinner tonight. Ah, Alex. Emma had met him at a business conference a few months ago. He was the owner of a small but growing organic bakery, and from what I'd seen, he was everything James wasn't: kind, honest, and genuinely supportive of Emma's ambitions. You should go, I encouraged her. You've been working too hard lately. Have some fun. Emma hesitated. Are you sure? We were going to go over the quarterly reports tonight. I waved her off. The reports can wait. Go, enjoy your evening. As Emma gathered her things, I couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. Alex was a good man, and he made Emma happy. As I watched her leave, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. Maybe someday soon, I'd be planning a wedding again, a real one this time, full of love and honesty. And after that? Well, I wouldn't say no to a grandchild or two.